All right, what's going on, everyone? So we have a lot to talk about today. Um, R.I.P. Daunte, Wright, and just another day. It seemed like every day is either like a police killing or a mass shooting or some type of terrible news. We give you that, but we also update you on positive developments and just do full policy breakdown. So we have a lot to break down when it comes to that. What are they actually going to do in Congress? Would any legislation actually make a difference in police killings, or is it just going to take a mindset change? So that's an interesting discussion right there. Um, we might actually be getting out of Afghanistan in 2021. Can you believe that? What, 20 years later? The Afghanistan war is older than some of these people that might be watching this video. And that's
Facts.
amazing to say. So we're going to talk about that. Um, we want to talk about Andrew Yang, outside the box thinker. And currently, he in the lead in the polls in New York City. But will his win actually be good for progressives, or would it be a negative? How? What do we mean? Stay tuned. Find out. And now, progressives too. I had to take a deep pause with this because we was talking off air. It seems like a lot of progressives is losing their mind right now, and
Damn straight.
some of it is legitimate, and other issues. eh. So we're gonna get into that too. Progressives in Congress are getting lit up by their online left base anyway. They getting lit up right now. People are not happy with them, and is that fair? Stay tuned. But the first thing we want to talk about is definitely the Daunte Wright situation. And like I said, another day, another police killing. And I don't want to trivialize this just because every life is important. But like when I hear this, I'm not surprised. I almost didn't watch the video because I'm like, I don't want to see this again. I'm so sick of seeing this, but I think sometimes that's how you get numb if you just kind of block it out. When I heard about it, I didn't even want to read about the story, to be honest. I'm just like, I've been seeing this episode over and over and over again. It's like, you know, when you watch cable TV and they keep showing the same TV movie all the time,
Right, right.
and every time you turn like this movie on again, like I know what's going to happen. It happened again. The interesting thing is that it's in Minneapolis again.
Yep.
So far, I want to ask you two questions. First, when you heard about Dante Walker killing and the supposedly reaching for the taser, but reach for the gun, what was your thoughts? And do you think the Justice for George Floyd Act that's in Congress, if it were to pass, would it make a difference? And do you think there's any chance of it passing? So I guess that's three questions. Go ahead.
Yeah, in terms of Dante, right. I mean, when heard about it, it was Sunday night when I heard about it, and I just had seen it, in a group chat I was in, and then I saw it on everything on Twitter. I saw his mom talking, and I was like, man, I don't even know how his mom is standing up right now. You know, his brothers, and his son. I didn't even realize, he was a young man, had a very young son as well. It just broke my heart again. That was just the main thing right there. It's like, another one, same city or same metro area, I guess, Minneapolis, as you said. And there's been efforts to try to do stuff with the police in Minneapolis itself, but this is a suburb, so it's a different jurisdiction. If the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act was law, would this have still happened? It's a tough question, man. I think there, if it was law and it was implemented, I think you'd have a lesser chance of it happening because there'd be more, ramifications for police misconduct and whatnot. But I don't know, man. I mean, these people that were involved. I mean, the lady that pulled the taser out, and supposedly she pulled the taser, or she pulled a gun out instead of it being a taser. She was a veteran of 26 years in the force. You would think somebody like that would know better, right? Who's probably been in every situation you can think of, and she just decided to do that. And I just saw earlier today, both her and the police chief resigned. As everybody listening in probably will know, that's a very defensive mechanism, so that they don't get fired and get reprimanded and lose certification and whatnot. That's what they do. They resign. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot to do. There's a lot to unpack. I know here in Maryland, they just passed a series of police accountability bills. They're reforming the Police Bill of Rights. If you guys don't know what the Police Bill of Rights are, those are measures that have been passed in many states all around the country, giving the police certain powers and abilities. Maryland is kind of curtailing some of those. Larry Hogan, our governor, obviously vetoed the bill, the series of bills. But we are fortunate enough to have a legislature that could override those vetoes. But I think some of those efforts at the state level are going to be coming down the pike. Minnesota, even though it's a blue state, it has a mixed legislature. But I think some of those type of things are going to come down the pike. I think activists and organizations are going to be pushing for measures like those. But those are kind of my thoughts right now on Daunte Wright and what happened Sunday.
Yeah, that was a great assessment. And just to piggyback off of some of the things you were saying, it's kind of like if we pass gun control, right? That's not going to end all mass shootings.
Right.
In a lot of these laws that pass, it depends on who doing the implementation. So the laws is only as good as the people willing to enforce it. Now, I'll give you a quick example of this. Before I give this example, don't get me wrong, I'm not equating this to police shootings, but remember the Defense of Marriage Act, right? It was a bill basically making it illegal for same-sex marriages, right? Now, states went ahead and legalized same-sex marriages. And this is not a debate about whether you support that or not. This is irrelevant to the point. But my point is, it depends who the president was at the time, whether it got enforced or not. So when Obama became president, this is before the Supreme Court declared same-sex marriage illegal, he wasn't enforcing it. And
Right.
when George W. Bush was president, the law was enforced. So all these laws are just like that. It depends on who's in office. Do they really care about the legislation? Would they actually do their job and enforce the law? So one of the things in the Justice for George Floyd Act is it gives state attorney generals a lot of power. Now in Minnesota, that'd be a good thing in Minnesota because we got Keith Ellison, very
Right.
Very progressive black man. He was a former Congress member, the first Muslim American ever elected to Congress. He should have been the DNC chair, but they tried to link him to Farrakhan, and they really smeared him. They tried to smear him for him not to win the attorney general race, but he beat those odds and he won. So in Minnesota, that could be a good thing. But then you got the F-boy attorney general in Texas, in Oklahoma, not so much,
Not so much, yeah.
I think it would be a state-by-state thing in that, because the bill really do give state attorney generals a lot of flexibility. But one of the great things it actually does is it reforms qualified immunity.
Immunity,
yeah. Biggest provision in Justice for George Floyd Act right there. So that's the big thing. But because I don't really just like going to CNN or whatever source, New York Times, whatever you name. I actually like to go to congress.gov and actually see how it written up there. And my problem with it says it's going to reform qualified immunity. Maybe I missed it, or maybe because you know how they write these laws, real convoluted. I
Right,
didn't see
exactly.
exactly how they was going to reform it because I was reading through it and I kept reading the section. I was like, okay, it says reform, like exactly how you going to reform it. It
Right.
explained what qualified immunity was. I'm like, yeah, I know what qualified immunity is. And for those of you who don't know what qualified immunity is, it gives law enforcement special protection. It's basically to make it simple, if a law enforcement officer believed what they was doing was right, it basically give them cover, or they feel like they was in danger, it give them cover, which is really problematic because how you gonna tell somebody that unless it's on video camera live is it is clear you can't, it's hard to say that okay I didn't fear because that's subjective. It's very subjective, yeah, especially when most of these juries have a bias towards law enforcement anyway. That's why
Hmm.
it's so problematic, and that need to get, we need to throw that law in the bushes.
Exactly.
Um, but exactly how they do it, I don't know. And the same thing with the New Jersey law that passed, right? Because New Jersey did police reform, and
Hmm.
the problem with that was it give a lot of power to an agency within the law enforcement department. I'm like, well, who's the person that's going to be reviewing it? You know, like I want to always know who's the person that you're giving the power to, because you know that's what's going to make the law effective, whether you choose to enforce it or not. So the only thing that will stop it is clear consequences
Hmm.
for police officers. Um, that would help, and also over time, we definitely need to change the mindset of what police need to be, and stop dancing around the race issue because a lot of people don't want to talk about race.
They don't talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, there's reports during the Bush era about white supremacists infiltrating law enforcement. This was under the Bush FBI. Also, there was reports when Obama took over about radicalized ex-military members coming out of the military and becoming radicalized into white supremacist groups. And
Hmm.
you know, at the time, conservatives didn't want to talk about that.
Yeah.
So over time, we're gonna have to work on just changing everybody's mindset in this country. Start really talking about these issues, and hopefully, as generations pass, mindsets will be completely different. Hopefully, but until then, consequences need to happen. So I think it would help. It wouldn't told. It might, in this case, it might have not have made a difference, because if it really was an accident, it's just a sloppy accident. But maybe if we had some more consequences and they know they can be held accountable, they wouldn't be so sloppy.
Yeah, yeah, and then you also have the power of the unions. That's another tricky thing. They might be the most powerful type of union in America, the police union. And obviously, both of us we are pro-union in a general sense, but the power of the police unions is a big sword that they wield to leap accountability. Unfortunately.
Absolutely, absolutely. Any last comment on this?
No, I think I mean we just have to hope and pray that that these incidents just we have to that they stop happening, but we gotta get the word out and try to get more of these like laws in different states passed to prevent some of this. But it's another heartbreaking situation.
I hear you, and I co-sign that. Um, so while we talking about police, your boy Andrew Yang gets some criticism, partly because his comments about cracking down on street vendors. And what people are saying is you are exposing people to more contact with the police. And you know, the NYPD don't have the best of president reputations, and with everything going on around this country with police and people like, no, what that why would you have police crack down on something as petty as that? And we've seen how some of these petty incidents happen. Um, you had Eric Gardner with the loose cigarettes. The Daunte Walker, I
Yeah.
guess the whole stop was about what the air fresheners. That's the speculation, or like I'm going to hold off on that because we don't know exactly. But that was the speculation about like the freshener trees, and it was a simple.
Mm-hmm.
There was a story in Virginia where it was an army officer that got stopped by the police. Black and Latino gentleman, half black, half Latino, or Afro Latino, I guess.
Afro, yeah. Mm-hmm.
He was an officer in the army, and the police are still wilding on. Pepper sprayed him, threatened him for no reason. They never even told him why they pulled him over.
Apparently, they said it was because his windows were too tinted and he didn't have his plate on the back of the he didn't have his plate on the back of the car, but the plate was in the back seat.
Yeah, because it was a new vehicle.
It was a new car, and so there was temporary tags. Yeah.
Yeah. Thankfully, in that situation, those two cops got fired right away.
They got fired right away. Yep.
Thankfully, maybe like they might want to look at and do something else because that was utterly ridiculous what they did. But yeah, that's the type of stuff you risk when you have cops interact with people over these petty incidents. Now, I want you to respond in that, and overall, would Andrew Yang win in the Democratic primary to be New York City mayor? And whoever wins the primary probably will end up being here, New York City most likely. Would that be a good thing for progressives, or would that be kind of problematic? Because some of his policies, even though we might like UBI, you the perfect person to answer this question, as you are an OG in the Yang game. You might be active. You might be the double OG Yang game.
Yeah, man. I mean, so in terms of street vendor tweet and the NYPD stuff, Yang did come out and say he regretted the tweet, which he should have regretted because it came off as if he was going to have the NYPD go down the street and go to your mama who's selling churros and give them fines for this or that and the other. And that's the strength and weakness of Andrew Yang. He'll put up an idea. Sometimes it'll be interesting, right? But then he'll have something like that where it's like, what the hell are you talking about, dude? Like, nobody's talking about this, right? Nobody I know in New York is talking about that. So, exactly. So that's kind of, and this campaign is kind of odd because I think you have some of this consultant team that he has, some of these guys they worked with Bloomberg, advising him. And that's where I have some pause with this candidacy. So if he's up in the polls right now, there's really not a lot of opposition research on him. I mean, that's damaging to him, right? The guy was vetted when he was running for president. Whatever is out there is out there. So I don't think the other candidates are going to be able to hit him with some kind of thing unless he has like some kind of scandal, which doesn't seem likely. So if he wins, as he looks like he's in good position to win, would that be good or bad for progressives? I am not sure. I think on a couple of issues, I think he will be pretty progressive, right? So I think he will try to do a pilot UBI thing in New York City, which will help, some poor families. I think, I haven't read through his whole platform, but, there's some other things where, he's trying to help with the transit system. He's trying to get federal money for New York City. He's trying to leverage what he has in terms of his relationships with the president, the vice president, the transportation secretary, especially when the new infrastructure package gets passed. And New York State will obviously get a lot of the money. So he has some positives going on that direction. In terms of the negatives, as I mentioned before, he's got Bloomberg people advising him. So that gives you pause. He doesn't really want to tax rich people in New York City to pay for some of his initiatives. He wants to mix and match stuff from the budget that already exists. I think that's problematic. I don't think there's this surge of people leaving New York. I don't think there's a lot of evidence to that. The only people will be some white boomers who go to Florida, which always happens. So I think it's kind of a double-edged, sword on that. Like, I think on some avenues there'll be some progressive wind, but I think on other avenues, I think the progressives are going to be fighting him, because he will maybe try to get some of this weird Bloomberg-ish type stuff initiative. I don't think he's going to start doing stuff like stop and frisk and stuff like that, but I don't know. I think on the economic side, a lot of people have dubbed him a little bit on the libertarian side in terms of the Democratic Party, which is definitely the case. And I think even though he's not a person who's saying he's going to cut government spending and cut services, but when you look at his UBI plan, how is he going to pay for it? What's he going to take the money out of, right? So that's the thing that would have the biggest pause for. I think he does want to help businesses, get restarted, post pandemic. He has some interesting ideas there. I think it's really a mixed bag with Yang, just like it was in the presidential. But I think on the presidential, and we kind of talked about this before we went live, his ideas are more, some of his good ideas, like a UBI, are more doable at a federal level, right? There's more flexibility. When you have a municipal budget, the budget is the budget, right? You can't deficit spend. You got to generate the revenue, or you got to work with the state to get the funds that you need. So it's I was, when he ran for mayor, I wasn't surprised, but I was like, when you're mayor, you're way more limited in the imagination of what you can do. But the red flags are there, and I think the progressive community sees that. I think you see that online. You see that with the other candidates a little bit, but the other candidates, it's very forced, it's very political, it's not authentic. You can just tell they're attacking him because he's up in the polls. They're not attacking him because they might disagree with him on ideological grounds or on a principle here or there. And I think the media, I'm not in New York, so I don't know, but I don't think he's getting attacked in the media that much, at least from what I see.
He's very well liked.
He's very well liked because he's a nice guy.
Mm.
He's not a bad person. And there's no, looks like he has a nice family. His wife is, a survivor of sexual assault. She's very outspoken about stuff like that. He has an autistic child. That gets him, he talks about that. He talks about a lot about the care economy, care giving, things like that. I think that resonates with a lot of people. The Asian American community obviously is excited about him. So there's all of that going on.
Yeah.
But if he got in there, it would be very fascinating to see how he would govern, because he's never been in public life. So.
Right. And in New York City, that's one of the few areas where Asian American votes make a difference because of the population. I believe Asian Americans about 10% in New York City.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's one of the few areas in the country. I think New York and maybe the Bay Area, where the Asian vote actually really carries some weight.
Yeah. And even in, when he went to Georgia for Ossoff and Warnock,
mm-hmm.
they were mobilizing the Asian American community in the Atlanta area, which in the November election and in the Senate election that we saw, they actually did mobilize. And that's actually because a lot of people are moving down south.
Yeah.
We talk about Black people moving down south. There's a lot of Asian people moving down south too.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another thing that's something to watch in the South in the years to come. But yeah, it'll be pretty fascinating.
Yeah, it's a few concerns about Yang, and I do agree. We was talking about this off air that a policy like UBI is more realistic on a federal level. And it's not even the state level, because New York City is a unique city. It's not like most other cities, even the way they conduct politics, just because of the amount of money New York City generates. But
Right.
it's not even on a state level. It's on a city level. Doing a real UBI on a city level is going to be extremely hard, even though there is ideas about that, even where I'm at in New York State, in Buffalo, just because they just legalize marijuana, and the law give a lot of flexibility to each county on how they want to implement the law, whether they want to opt out or not. And part of the way you can pay for some of your initiatives like UBI is the tax of marijuana. So, but as far as Yang itself, his UBI plan in New York, I don't even think it reached 1 million people. I think it's only going to be like 500,000.
Yeah, something like that.
Fraction the population of New York City.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned that rich people, or just people leaving New York City in general because of taxes. And I think where that come from is that I think in about 2020, I think New York City lost about 400 and something thousand people. But people got to remember, New York was the epicenter of the coronavirus.
Right.
Before that, it was thriving even with the high taxes. But I guess it's a debate how high you can go before
You see people relocate.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But I don't think it's there yet. I don't. I think people's overreacting to the few 100,000 lost. You remember, New York City is a city with about almost 9 million people.
Exactly.
So 400 and something thousand people sound like a lot, but that's a fraction of their population. And again, a lot of that is due to the coronavirus, because a lot of people lost their jobs. In New York City was the first place that was slammed with it.
Exactly.
So people got to take that as a variable and to account of why that happened, because that wasn't happening the year before.
Right.
But my concern with Yang is a few different things. He have a lot of blind spots. I know some people on the right, because he's more libertarian, and he stay away from with people, this cat, right? And he stay away from quote unquote the SJW stuff, which a lot of people just hate. And I get it, because sometimes the SJW or social justice warrior stuff is applied where it doesn't need to be applied, but sometimes is necessary. And sometimes there is specific issues that a certain group is going through that need to be addressed.
Facts, yeah.
So I know a lot of, I would say probably some Muslims have some pause. And, New York City does have a decent Muslim population, more than decent, pretty good Muslim population, whether it's, immigrant Muslims or Black Muslims population. His stance on BDS is problematic and is unauthentic. Because I seen him do an interview, and like his answers, I think was the Kyle and Cristobal podcast.
Yeah, they pressed him on BDS. Yep. Yeah.
And his answers were horrendous.
It was terrible. Yeah. And as you said, inauthentic. It was clearly something that, and he wrote an op-ed in Forward, I believe, which is a Jewish website, magazine website, and where he was, equating BDS activists to like Nazis or something like that. It's something crazy, something clear. He, that's not something that he talked about at all when he ran for president, right? And then now when he's running for mayor, it's definitely pandering, and it's definitely, definitely trying to fish for some votes. But then he is getting a backlash. I've seen from some Muslim activists there, especially Palestinian and Arab, and even obviously in the Black community. I've seen it online. And I've seen some people heckle him at some of his public events about it. And he doesn't know how to counter. He doesn't know how to, defend his position, basically, his so-called position.
Yeah, the position is really undefendable. You can't defend that position. And I'm not even somebody that I say that is pro. I'm not pro or against BDS, but like saying that people can't do it is ridiculous.
Right.
Saying that people can't do peaceful, it's not even protest, but like use a strategy of boycott, peaceful boycotts to get their message across. It's
Right.
absolutely ridiculous. You could boycott anything you want to. Like
Exactly.
the right wingers are trying to boycott Coca-Cola because they did a real neuter statement about the voting rights suppression that's going on in Georgia. The bills that they signed, they did a real tepid statement, and some right wingers want to boycott them. Should they not be allowed to do that?
Right.
It doesn't make sense.
Exactly. It doesn't make any sense.
Boycott whatever you want to. It doesn't make sense.
Yep.
And you got literally the problem with BDS is not that people was against it, but they want to make it a law where you can't do it.
Right. Right.
That's the problem. Like, what type of that's really America? That's really where you want to go?
It's pretty much unconstitutional. Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
And they even tried, and there's even talk about it in Congress every year, it seems like, that they would attach something like that to a bill where if you did BDS, if you were a company or somebody that performed BDS, you would be fined or penalized some way. And that's clearly against the First Amendment.
You're right. And they used that, I think, to smear Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar.
For sure.
Those,
for sure.
Those two of the things they use. We're going to get to them in 1 second as well. And just one more thing, like, Yang, like, because his focus is not really on those things. Police in New York, in this country, is a problem, but specifically in New York City is a really big problem. And the fact that that's not even just where his focus on. I think he have a major blind spot to it. I just don't think he really cares about it. And he got some Bloomberg advisors that's very problematic and give a major cause to pause for me. So,
yeah, I agree.
So, real quick, we're going to talk about the backlash that progressives are getting in Congress. I mean, it's a hellstorm right now. People are not happy with specifically AOC.
Yeah,
I'm seeing people starting to really go at Ilhan Omar as well, specifically those two. And yeah, Bernie Sanders is getting some heavy backlash. I think some of it is deserved, and some of it, I think, people are misreading the situation. But I'm going to toss it to you with this.
Yeah, I mean, on some things, like with AOC specifically, and since we were on the topic about Israel Palestine, she had she had that conversation with, I forgot which group it was, which Jewish group it was, but she was she was having a live stream, and I guess they had every member of the New York delegation on that stream. But it's pretty incredible, just all the word salad and the platitudes and the all of that stuff. And I think she definitely deserves to get criticized for that, because she says one thing on her website about the conflict, and then she's now Joelzing and blah blah blah. She doesn't know what she's talking about.
One thing before you go on though, I don't mean to interrupt. I never thought AOC knew anything about foreign policy though. She hardly ever talked about.
She doesn't talk about it much. But the funny thing is, when she, if you look at her issues site and if you've seen her past statements, you'll see, okay, she was, she clearly is around these activists, right? Who are in the Palestinian and BDS, and you could tell she was in that. But now that she's in Congress, she's got to switch it up, because she represents some of these people who are in it.
And that's not surprising, because when she was elected, I never felt like she was passionate about foreign policy. I felt like she was passionate about immigration.
Yeah, and domestic policy.
And domestic policies like
healthcare,
climate change, and healthcare.
Climate,
those were the issues. Even like I have criticisms of her, like when it comes to race relations. We talked about before about stuff like reparations. I really don't like her stance on that. I
Yeah.
thought times when she campaigned for Bernie Sanders, she was ineffective. But go ahead, you can finish with that.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, and I think she got criticized roundly online about it. That's fine. I think she definitely deserved it. The
Mhm.
funny thing is, there was that podcaster who got the police came up and said you tweeted something about her, and then they came to that's crazy. I know that happened to somebody who tweeted it out about Ted Cruz too. There was
What happened?
there was another person who tweeted something about Ted Cruz, because Ted Cruz did something awful, right?
Mhm.
And then apparently the FBI came to that person's door too.
Oh, I
So
didn't even hear about
yeah, so
I didn't hear about that.
yeah, it's pretty crazy. So I don't know. I think it's definitely part of the whole post January 6th environment that the U.S. government agencies are going through. But anyway, she's getting a lot of heat. I think too much. I think she's getting I think it's undeserved. I mean, she's not what's standing between you and healthcare and you and $15 minimum wage. Same thing with like Ilhan Omar and Bernie. I think from their perspective, if we want to go from their perspective, think about it like this. At least Ilhan and AOC, the last 2 years they were freshmen, right? They were in the majority in the House, but they didn't have the Senate, and you had Donald Trump at the White House. Then Joe Biden wins, you win the Senate, the possibilities to actually do stuff open up, right? But the progressives, it doesn't seem like they are as committed to holding the quote unquote line in negotiations or whatever on Capitol Hill as the moderates are. Because you have these moderates who say, oh, corporate tax rate, Joe Manchin, oh, it can't go below 25%. Or these other ones from New Jersey and New York and some of these other blue states that have high taxes where you can't, the SALT deduction, state and local tax deduction, was capped in 2017. They want to uncap it. They say, Biden, you're not going to get my vote unless we do something about this.
Mhm.
But you don't see the progressives doing any of that right now, right? Even though this is like the opening salvo to the next big bill.
Right.
I think that's where people are getting criticized. They're criticizing them, and I think that's perfectly valid. But I think from their perspective, they might be better off just not saying anything, and then trying to fight for what they can do behind the scenes. But Bernie, I think Bernie's the only one who's kind of coming out and saying, well, I want X, Y, and Z. I want to lower the Medicare age. I want to have Medicare cover dental, vision, and all that. I want to do whatever else he's talking about, which might happen because he's the budget chairman. He can maybe get a couple things in there. I don't know. Who
Yeah.
knows? But I think these people online on the left, they don't know how to act. I mean, it's a weird time. There's no Donald Trump. There's no Joe Biden is not as terrible as probably we thought he could be.
Still terrible, but not as terrible. Yeah.
But yeah, he's not. He's much better than Donald Trump, right? I mean,
Yeah,
there's no
definitely.
question. There's no
Right.
question. I mean, you actually have somebody who's competent and actually doing the work, right? I mean, that's a big change.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's kind of how I view it right now. I think it's just it's a hot void that the progressive left on, especially on the internet, but even in general, with Bernie not going to be president. There's a big void there, and there's a lot of different parts of the left that doesn't know what to do. There's elements that are like, you know what, let's work with the Biden administration. We have some friends in some places here. We can maybe get a couple things here and there. Then there's others who are, more on the, um, more on the oppositional phase where they're like, we have to oppose Biden, but if Biden does something good, we don't know what we can say about it. So we have to probably go after some of the progressives and say that they didn't fight hard enough for X, Y, and Z. That's what I'm thinking is happening.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you're seeing. And if you look at especially AOC and even Ilhan's mentions, it's gotten like that. especially with Ilhan is interesting because she's touting a lot of her work or a lot of the work that Biden administration is doing that go to her priorities, right? Some stuff that she maybe co-sponsored 2 years ago, it was in the last bill, and the Biden administration is now implementing, right? There's something I think about school lunches that it was in the COVID relief bill, I think. She had legislation 2 years ago about school lunches, so she's highlighting that. So stuff like that is happening.
Right. I think there's a few things going on. I think you spoke to that pretty accurately. You got to think not all progressives are the same. Like when it comes to foreign policy, like I was mentioning, I never had confidence in AOC in foreign policy. I'm not excusing her. Don't get it wrong. I'm not excusing her, but like whoever looked at AOC for some foreign policy guidelines, I would do that.
Yeah, nobody does.
Now, Ilhan Omar was more in the foreign policy realm. Now, it would have been that you would asked her that same question, and she would have gave that answer. I would have been like, "What the?"
Like, right.
Yeah, because that was more of what she was concerned about, and I think Rashida Tlaib was kind of a blend of both of them.
Right.
When it comes to domestic and foreign policy, you got people like Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman that just getting in there. And I think with, let's be honest, we're going to be 100% honest. I'm not taking a shot at anybody, but a lot of these progressive commentators, they're not rich, but a lot of them are better off than the average person.
Right.
So for them, they can withstand not getting certain stuff. Like for example, right? If you get in like so many views for years on end, you was making pretty good money off of YouTube before they did the crackdown and started burying videos. But they already had a substantial audience. Most of them got Patreons.
Right.
And I'm not counting pockets or anything like that, but I'm sure a lot of them is doing better than a lot of people out there, so that's for one. And because of that, and let's be honest again, most of them are white. I'm not trying to make this a race issue.
That's true though.
Most of them are white, right? So I feel like it's about 3 or 4 issues that they care about. And they're very important too. And I care about them too, majorly. I feel like they care about Medicare for all.
Mm-hmm.
They cared about the $15 minimum wage.
Mm-hmm.
What else?
They'll probably say ending wars, right? That might be number 3.
Ending wars.
And then number 4 might be climate, a big climate,
right.
package that averts the climate crisis.
Right. And you watch some of these channels, they talk about these issues over and over and over, right? There's so many giant problems in this country. And also sometimes they don't know when to pick the fights, right? The COVID relief bill was not the battle to pick that fight. Now, I do want them, and I'm going to criticize them if they don't fight the next time the defense authorization bill come out, because that's when you're going to have leverage. And I think you can win the public relations war during that debate, because I think most of us would say that the defense budget is too bloated. So fight for a lot of your priorities in that, and then you'll have more leverage.
Mm-hmm.
You'll have much more leverage when it comes to that. The COVID relief bill, not so much, because people really need that money. You have people that have kids. Some people receive like $5,000 with those direct checks, and beyond the direct check with the child tax credit, people are going to receive a lot of money come July. And people really need that relief right now. States got relief,
right?
Help with the vaccines, and the left wing media don't have the reach that people think it have. The way it would have been framed, MSNBC, CNN, all the establishment news channels would have framed it as progressives is blocking you from getting money and getting relief.
Facts.
That wasn't the bill to do that. Also, to defend the progressives in Congress, I usually don't even defend politicians. It's like F all of them. But to defend them, I sure there was a few backroom deals cut to get stuff in the legislation, because there was some progressive stuff in legislation beyond the checks. The child tax credit, like I said, that's very progressive, and I love that because that's a gateway to UBI, which I think
It is. Yep. It is. Yep.
That's very progressive legislation right there. Also, the money for the Black farmers. So we don't have a lot of Black representation in Congress, and we especially don't have a lot of good Black representation in Congress. So you're asking somebody like Cori Bush, freshman, that people are looking to represent some of our issues, some Black people issues. Same thing with Jamal Bowman, right? And
Ayanna Pressley.
And Ayanna Pressley. 3 progressives, right? How would they look voting against that when people were trying to get money to Black farmers for literally decades on it?
Right. And plus you had, and the senator that kind of shepherded that was a new senator, Senator Warnock.
Mm-hmm.
And
there you go.
The first Black senator from Georgia. I mean, there's a lot of levels to some of this stuff that's in there.
Right. And again, we got Cory Booker, even though I wouldn't consider him progressive, he had the Justice for Black Farmers Act, which was very, very important. A lot of the legislation that was in that was transferred into the relief bill. And like Republicans are so mad, it was called the reparations. they did that with a lot of stuff, like you said.
I saw Lindsey Graham say that. Yep, that's right, crazy. Yep.
It is absolutely, to be clear, it's not reparations.
Of course,
but crazy. They did that with a lot of stuff in the relief bill. Like you mentioned, the lunch program with Ilhan Omar. That's a initiative she really cared about. It was trying to get in.
Right.
So, in the transportation bill, with AOC, like it's not enough, but there's money being allocated to parts of the Green New Deal, even though they wouldn't call it that, and it's nowhere near enough. But I'm sure little deals been getting made. And I'm sure part of that deal was to scrap the $15 minimum wage. Yeah, I know that makes people irate, but even some of the people, I did heard from people that not making $15 an hour that still wanted that bill passed, even if they didn't get that in because they needed that direct money. Because like I said, some people was getting $5,000 and they need that money now.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, if they don't fight later, if they don't fight during the defense authorization bill and the transportation bill and infrastructure bill, then we can have some other debates. I think they jumping the gun with the criticism right now, though.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Yeah, I agree with that too.
All right, just one more thing, and real quick, it's announced that troops will be permanently leaving Afghanistan come September 1st. I'm skeptical. Hopefully, this is true. Hopefully, it's not. I know that the deal that Trump signed, that it was supposed to be May 1st, that some troops are going to be left behind with the garden. But by September 11th, basically all U.S. troops are supposed to be out of Afghanistan, or all combat troops, at least they said. What's your thoughts on this? And do you think it's actually going to happen?
I think it will happen, but I have a feeling that there will be some kind of residual force that's there. Not a combat force, but something that is near the embassy. But other than that, I think they will try to do it because I think there's just a lot of fatigue about Afghanistan. I mean, everybody has it. I don't even think the Republicans are going to really attack Biden for this as much as you think, as some people would think. But I think it just has to happen. I think for Biden, it's another quick win for him, honestly. He could be like, hey, I finally ended this crap. And he could technically be right. So, but we got to be skeptical because you never know. We've seen this play before with Afghanistan. It's been 20 years. It'll be 20 years this October. So if they get out before the 20-year mark. So I'm skeptical, but let's hope that actually happens.
All right, that's all I have, and I agree with everything you said. Let's hope it actually happens. All right, we're gonna get on out of here. Make sure you subscribe, chant, share the videos. I mean, if I say so myself, this was an excellent show. Yo, y'all need to
For real.
you need to get this out. Who's spitting like this? You know, get this out. Subscribe. Thanks.
Peace out, y'all.